So you're thinking about moving to the Kansas City area, but you are stuck between the decision of two popular cities. One is Overland Park, Kansas, and the other is Lee Summit, Missouri. Well, these two great cities have so much in common, but honestly, once you experience these lifestyle of the differences in each, those differences may actually be the deciding factor of which city that you are going to choose from. So for starters, Overland Park, Kansas has a little more hustle and definitely a little bit more corporate feel. And yet Lee Summit is a bit more down to earth. It's a smaller community and it's got some unique charm to it, especially for those who are true nature enthusiasts. But the real question is, which one of these cities is right for you? Because it's not just about the schools, it's not just about entertainment options, it's not just about the lakes and the location, it's really about the community that you are going to build in the city and to be around and your ideal lifestyle. These two cities often get compared. In fact, one of my viewers asked me to take a deep dive into these two cities and compare them. So in this video, I'll be breaking down and we'll be talking about things like jobs and things to do and the commutes to various locations, the schools, including private schools as well as homeschool co-ops that are available. And I'm even going to talk about a few churches that are in both cities, and I'm going to spotlight them as well so that you can get a real feel for what it's like to actually live in Overland Park versus Lee Summit. And if we've never met before, my name is Anita Cordell. And my husband and I lived in Overland Park, Kansas, right when we first got married. And then we later on bought a home in Shawnee, Kansas. And we stayed in Johnson County for decades. Then an opportunity came up to buy my husband's childhood home. And so what we did was we moved from the Kansas side of the Kansas City metropolitan area to the Missouri side and bought my husband's childhood home. So we've moved across the state line, and I've got experience living in both sides of the state line, both Kansas and Missouri. And so we've lived through the decision of, you know, what you are facing right now is comparing these two states and these two cities. And in fact, I've done a deep dive into comparing what it's like to live on the Kansas side as well as what it's like to live on the Missouri side and some of the differences between the two. And so you should check out that video because I go into a little bit more details of that. I'm also a licensed real estate agent and a team lead of the Yellow Brick Group. And we've helped hundreds of people either relocate here to the Kansas City metropolitan area or upsize or downsize, including helping parents come here and live near their families. I've also helped a lot of people purchase their first home. What I wanted to share with you is this. The right move is not just about the address. You know, we like to think that it is, but it really isn't just about the address. It's about aligning yourself with not just a lifestyle, but really, I believe there's even a bigger purpose than even that. Because the right move is making sure that you're in alignment with your purpose in life and even how you can be a big part of affecting the lives around you and where you serve. And as many of you know, I'm not just a real estate agent. I am a believer in Christ as well. And I love bringing faith into the journey of real estate. And you will often hear me talking about that. I believe that God has a purpose and a plan for you and your family. And yes, I do believe that purpose includes even the house that you are going to purchase and the neighbors that you're going to be around and the people that you're going to affect and the lives that you will touch and be influenced by and the relationships that you will build. And the process of buying a home is part of that, and even the church that you're going to attend. So while we're going to be talking about Overland Park, Kansas and Lee Summit, Missouri, just know that some of the things that you're going to be making a decision about will also align with your faith and your faith journey as well with you and your family. And what better agent to walk you through that process than a fellow believer? So let's get into it. We're going to first talk about the size and the geography of these two cities. So when it comes to Lee Summit, Missouri, the approximate population is about 105,892. And there's actually a growth rate with Lee Summit that's 0.81%. And that's been a pretty consistent growth rate since about the 2020 timeframe. Lee Summit has about 63 square land miles and 2 square land miles of water, and it's located about 16 miles southeast of downtown Kansas City. The city continues to expand. There's developments like the Green Street project near City Hall that's aiming to revitalize this area. And recently, Lee Summit, Missouri was recognized by Fortune in 2023 as one of the best places to live for families. It was ranked number 14 out of 50 best places, and that is a huge accomplishment and a huge honor. I would say that that's also something to consider because it's so vital and such a neat thing to actually get recognized as. Now, when we're talking about Overland Park, the population is about double Lee Summit, so we're talking around 201,000. They're also experiencing a slight annual decline of population, so there's about 0.11% of this growth since 2020. And I'm not sure what the whole reasoning is for that. It could be that it's just starting to get not really landlocked, not that at all, but it's just there's been some slower developments and all that. But it's about 75 square miles and about a half a mile of water is included in that. Now, the also really cool thing about Overland Park is it is also ranked as one of the best places to live for families. I think it was in the top 10 recently for that, but we'll talk about some of that in a bit. Now let's talk about the job opportunities. So Lee Summit has some great opportunities when it comes to the education field, but they also have some wonderful opportunities when it comes to the medical field. In fact, I have personal experience with this. I've helped multiple people in the medical field purchase properties. One, in fact, right now is wanting to purchase in the Lee Summit or Overland Park area because they actually want to commute back and forth, and they're still trying to decide what to do on there. But there's a lot of newer hospitals and there's opportunity growth there in the medical field. It is no wonder why people are looking to Lee Summit, especially if they're in the medical professional area, because there's some great hospitals that have been built and some great medical opportunities when it comes to employment. Also, one of the biggest employers in Lee Summit is the Lee Summit School District. And then after that, believe it or not, Homeland Security. But Overland Park not only offers the Corporate Wood area, but they also offer a ton of jobs in the medical field. We've got Children's Mercy Hospital and some other great facilities, Menorah Medical Center. And so when you're looking at the medical field, both cities offer some great opportunities. But in Overland Park, there's also some other opportunities, like you've got T-Mobile, Black & Veatch, Sprint, and there's some other growth areas if you live in Overland Park. There's also some really great opportunities with Leawood, Kansas, which butts right up against Overland Park. And many people actually drive into Overland Park from Lee Summit to go into work and vice versa. So they might work in Lee Summit and live in Overland Park. So those two cities kind of interchange back and forth. It just depends on, do you want this lifestyle and work here, or do you want this lifestyle and work there, or do you want to live and work in both, whatever city you choose? And yet, if you want opportunity, when it comes to more corporate type feel, you are going to find that in Overland Park. Even in scientific and technical positions, you're going to find that in Overland Park. And probably because it's bigger than Lee Summit and there's a lot more business and corporate feel. So that's kind of the difference between those two cities when it comes to the job market. Now, when it comes to being in the news and, some spotlights on these two cities, I will tell you this, that Overland Park, it's got a special place in my heart because honestly, I mean, it was my very first place to live when I was married, and that's the place that we called home. And still to this day, I love being in Overland Park, Kansas. But just like Lee Summit, Overland Park, like I said, is rated very high in the best places to raise families. But it's even higher than Lee Summit, but still, they're neck and neck. The last study showed that it was one of the top 10 best places to live for families in the U.S. by livability.com. Now, here's another fun thing. The online dictionary describes the word happy as this feeling of contentment, and it's living with pleasure and satisfaction. Why do I say all of that, and what does that mean for Overland Park and for you? Well, according to wallethub.com, Overland Park is ranked as the second happiest American city in 2024. I even created a whole entire video breaking down all of the reasons why Overland Park made this list. The video breaks out the study and the things that were analyzed. So be sure and check out that video and understand why Overland Park actually made this list. Now let's talk about lifestyle. There's some things about the two cities that make the lifestyle of the two cities potentially be a huge reason why you might choose one or the other. Now, lifestyle of Lee Summit is very centered around nature. So the way that I view it is the biggest difference between these two cities is because Lee Summit is such a high nature enthusiast place. You've got opportunities for boating, fishing, sailing, jet skiing, lake life at its finest. And I think that that is one of the reasons why I feel like it's the biggest difference between the two. So it's really going to be about the lifestyle that you like. I feel like there's so many parks in Lee Summit. There's a lot in Overland Park as well, but there's several lakes in and around the Lee Summit area that are literally second to none. And I'm not just talking about public lakes either. We'll go into the public lakes, but you can actually live on a lake in and around Lee Summit. And it's different than just having a lake nearby that you can just hop in your car and go right down the street to a lake. Living on the lake is actually possible if you are in Lee Summit. For instance, there is a side little town. It's called Lake Lotawana, and it's incorporated as Lake Lotawana, but it feeds into the Lee Summit school districts, and it offers lake enthusiasts the largest lake in the Lee Summit area. And you have the option to live on the lake year-round, or if you want to buy a house in Lake Lotawana, you can have a lake-style home without having to drive all the way to the Ozarks. Lake Lotawana is on 480 acres, and it has about 2,125 property owners, and it's in the Lee Summit School District. And Lake Lotawana offers skiing, wakeboarding, sailing, jet skiing. I mean, even for a relaxing day, they have what's called the pontoon tie-up. And it's actually a thing. You can go off on maybe a Sunday afternoon or whatever and participate in the pontoon tie-up with neighbors. Is super common, and they'll just pull out their pontoon, tie them all up, and just enjoy a relaxing Sunday afternoon together. They also have a yacht club. Just knowing that there's such a great option to own a home on the lake without having to make the trek to the Ozarks is super cool. The average sales price in Lake Lotawana is $590,322 for a 3-bedroom, 1-bath home, and the average days on market for Lake Lotawana is 58. Then there's another lake that's in Lee Summit. It's a subdivision called Lakewood, and it's centered around the Lakewood Lakes. And it's a 365 acres, and it's basically this master planned community that's developed around this lake. It's another great opportunity to live on the lake in Lee Summit, and there's even a golf course there at Lakewood. The average sales price is $581,945 for a 4-bedroom, 3-bath home, and the average days on market is 41 days. Now let's talk about some public lakes. You've got Longview Lake, and it's this huge lake, and it spans across Kansas City, Missouri, Lee Summit, and Grandview. It's 930 acres of public space, 14 shelters, and you can get away for the day with power boating, water skiing, jet skiing, and you can also have a relaxing pontoon boat ride. And then there's Lake Jacomo. Lake Jacomo is 970 acres. It's on the northern side of Lee Summit, and it's also a public lake with pontoon, pedal boats, and kayaks, and they're all available to rent at the Lake Jacomo Marina. They even have this sailboat cove where people will take their sailboats out there in this little cove and socialize with other sailors. So fun. And I'm telling you, this lifestyle is second to none when it comes to the Lee Summit area and the community. There's so many people that have boats. Now, you do have to buy a home that is either going to have a location where you can keep your boat. So obviously, if you buy into one of these locations that is on the lake, you're not going to have an issue. But if you purchase a home that is outside of a lake community, then you're going to either want to purchase a property that is not in an HOA so that you can have your boat at your house. The second option is if you buy into a property that has an HOA and has restrictions and does not allow for the boats to be parked outside, then you'll need to purchase a property that either has a big enough garage space or something, or acreage, where you can hide it. Or a lot of times people will have their boat stored at a local rental place, which is pretty common here in the area. Now let's talk about some more public spaces. You've got Winterset Park Nature Trail, North Shore Trail, Shawnee Trace Nature Trail, James A. Reed Wildlife Area, and then you've got the Rock Island Trailhead. And this Rock Island Trailhead is super cool because it's like a miniature connection to the Katy Trail, which spans across most of Missouri. And so all of those little hiking opportunities are absolutely amazing. But if you're not a nature enthusiast, we do have other things in Lee Summit that you can participate with your family and your friends and your loved ones. There's escape rooms. We've got this really cool place called Sky Zone Trampoline Park. So many kids go there and love it. Then you've got the K1 Speed. And this is an indoor go-kart racetrack. It's super fun. My kids actually went a couple of weeks ago and they love it. Young adults absolutely love this place. Then you've got Arcade Alley. You've got Legacy Park Amphitheater, which is this outdoor concert area. Truly super fun for your family. Now let's move on over to Overland Park and talk about what's going on over there. What I will say is that everything comes second when it comes to soccer season. Overland Park is a lot of things. Boring is not one of them. You do have access to a lot of different things to do in Overland Park, whether it's indoor or outdoor, but when it comes to Overland Park, it is home of one of the best youth sports venues in the entire Midwest. And in fact, in some circles, Overland Park is actually deemed as the soccer capital of America. And yet, there's all kinds of other things to do when it comes to Overland Park. You've got great food, you've got robust shopping, you've got the lush botanical gardens and this impressive collection of festivals. There's live music, there's theater, there's all kinds of things to do when it comes to Overland Park. You can't ever get bored when it comes to living in Overland Park. Now, as far as lakes are concerned, this is where the big difference lies between Lee Summit and Overland Park. You do have a couple of lakes. One is called Regency Lake Park, and then the other one is called Lionsgate by the Lake. I will say this, that Lionsgate has 3 stocked ponds, and it is a quote-unquote lake community, if you can call it that, but there's not the lake community and the resort type living that you will find over in Lee Summit. The average sales price in Lionsgate is $775,543, and that's for a 5-bedroom, 4-bath home. And the days on market in Lionsgate are usually around the 78 days. Now, when it comes to that lifestyle, if you are going to live in Overland Park and you want a lake style lifestyle, you're going to have to drive to Lee Summit, or you're going to have to drive to Shawnee. But Shawnee, you can't get on there and speedboat or jet ski or anything like that. It's a lot smaller of a lake. I think it's 130 acres or something like that. You don't have those opportunities. You do have other things to do. You've got Deanna Rose Children's Farmstead. You've got the indoor new arboretum and botanical gardens. You got the museum at Prairie Fire. You can go golfing. You can go to iFly. And in fact, I've done my own video about iFly. I was surprised with a birthday celebration there, and it was so fun. And so I created a whole video about the experience. And so we've got unique things that are in Overland Park. There's always something going on in Overland Park. Like I said before, you are never bored. And if your kids ever say that and like they're bored in Overland Park, I'd be very surprised, because there's so much to do. I mean, every Sunday, for instance, from June through August in Overland Park, there's the Music in the Park. And it's a time for you to pack a picnic lunch, bring your lawn chairs, enjoy live music, and it's local music too. And there's also festivities that are for the rest of the community. You've got just a wholesome evening of entertainment, all for free. And if your dog digs music and likes to be around you as well, you're welcome to bring your dog and make sure that he's on a leash. And it just allows for a Sunday afternoon to be a fun day for everyone in your circle of loved ones. There's tons of festivals, like I mentioned too. There's a lot of events, there's bands, there's all kinds of stuff. And when it comes to like the arts, one of my favorite places to go on a date night or a nice time to get away from, the hustle and bustle of our lives, and even take my kids, is a place called New Theater Restaurant. I've mentioned this multiple times in other videos that I've done as one of my favorite places to go. I love New Theater Restaurant. It is such a great place to go to have a date night or what have you. You can even buy season tickets. Now, I will say this, that I don't ever buy season tickets. And the reason why is because a lot of the shows are not necessarily clean for little ears. And so I opt out of those shows, not because I have little ones at home anymore. I do not. But the way that I live my lifestyle, I do not like to subject myself to some of those shows that are not necessarily clean. So my suggestion would be is for you to go on every season and read the reviews and read what the shows are about, because you will definitely find a little more clean shows, but you'll be able to read the reviews. And for the most part, New Theater Restaurant is one of my favorite date nights to go. And I hope that you enjoy that too. And it could be just because, if you followed me around and listened to a lot of my videos, you know that I'm also a commercial and film actress. And so I have this arts side to me, and it just is a very enjoyable time to spend and watch performers. It also seems like everywhere you look when you're in Overland Park, there's art. And, like you've got the Shim Sham Shimmy at Metcalf. You've got the Walking Man at Johnson County Community College. Perhaps probably one of the most surprising places to find art is the fact that there's this recyclable center, and they use art as a display. And the art is actually made of recyclables. Then obviously you've got Chicken and Pickle and Serve, which houses the Head Honcho Pickleball League. Then obviously there's other things to do like nature trails. There are nature trails in Overland Park. You've got Indian Creek trails. Corporate Woods Park has got some trails in there. And when I worked in Corporate Woods or in the vicinity, I would always see people, taking their break, and there'd be women in suits and a skirt, and they would have their tennis shoes on and be walking around the Corporate Woods Park just to get out of the office and go and walk around. Then you've got Forest Park Trailhead, Tomahawk Creek Trail, and then you've got Kingston Lake Park. But there's also a whole lot more that you can go and walk around and bike and jog. There are a lot of options for a good stroll, a good jog. You just don't have quick access to the lake style living. You either have to drive out to Lee Summit or you have to drive north to the Shawnee Mission Park. And that one is a lot smaller. You can't pull out, your jet skis and what have you on that one. The other option is for you to drive to Hillsdale Lake. And that is a huge lake, and of course you have the option always to drive to the Ozarks. And a lot of people that I know have a second home in the Ozarks. So driving to a lake style event or weekend is a norm for some people if that is what you choose to do. But if you want to be closer to the lake living, Lee Summit would for sure be the place to go. Just a quick recap of Overland Park. It's very fast paced versus a little slower. And really the question is that do you want more access to lakes and type of nature, or do you want more connections when it comes to corporate living, corporate networking? But either way, I don't think that you're sacrificing a whole lot of connection to be in the Lee Summit area. There's more in Overland Park, merely just because of the population of its own. So when it comes down to it, you can either picture yourself kayaking with a family or hustling through networking events. And either way, whatever atmosphere you love would be a good option for you. But like I said, Overland Park is ranked as number 2 in the happiest place to live in America. And so there's that, regardless of the hustle and bustle of corporate America. And the way that they came up with this is that they studied the most populated cities in each state, and they compared them to 3 factors. It was emotional, physical well-being, income and employment, and then community and environment. And they studied those 3 main areas and came up with polls and studies and the whole bit. And Overland Park, Kansas came in at number 2. All right, let's move on to the food scene. So I wanted to just put this out there that due to the fact that Overland Park is obviously twice as big in population as Lee Summit, there's obviously more restaurants than you can imagine in Overland Park. And many of the restaurants are really focused on healthy lifestyle. One of my favorite places to go is called The Mix. I love The Mix, but I have to eat gluten-free, and so I'm always on the hunt for a really good and unique gluten-free menu or gluten-free restaurant. And Overland Park has so many options. Now, when you're talking about Lee Summit, it's obviously just a more laid back vibe. There's a lot of bars and grills. You've got the Iron Horse Bar and Grill. You've got Summit Grill, which is one of my favorite places to go. But there's also this other place called the Roots Seasonal Cuisine. And then you've got 54th Street Grill, and of course you've got Jack Stack Barbecue. One of my favorite places to go, obviously in Overland Park, I've mentioned before, is the New Theater Restaurant. And I have to be really careful when I go there, but they've been actually starting to put signs up that say this is gluten-free. And I think more and more restaurants are starting to do this. But I will say this, when it comes to dining, there's more fine dining in Overland Park. There might be 1 or 2 restaurants in Lee Summit that would be considered as fine dining. But when you go over to Overland Park, you've got J. Alexander's, the Brass Onion. You got Ya Euro Bistro. There's just a little bit, I guess it would be fine dining. But as far as barbecue is concerned, you have to check out Q39. That is one of people's favorites when it comes to barbecue. And if you know anything about Kansas City and the history of Kansas City, you know that we are huge on barbecue. There's tons of places to go, but Jack Stack Barbecue is also located in Overland Park. You just have so many options in Overland Park, most likely because it's a bigger city, and so there's a lot of fine dining and all kinds of places to go and eat. So it's just something to keep in mind for all of you foodies out there. All right, now when it comes to your faith and churches and what have you, I thought that I would just briefly mention this, that if you come from a city that's got a lot of big, huge churches, or what we call mega churches, Lee Summit doesn't have a ton of those big mega churches. And let me just say this, that the word mega is relative, right? I mean, if you like smaller churches, then you're going to think that, a church that's got 300 is a mega church. But if you are used to one that's got 3,000, then your whole perspective of what a mega church is going to be is a little different. But there are a couple larger ones, but there's plenty of smaller community type churches in Lee Summit. But as far as one of the bigger churches is concerned, there's one called Summit Park, and it's probably one of the biggest in Lee Summit. I know one of the pastors there, and he can get you connected there if you are more of evangelical or Assemblies of God. And if you like a smaller church, I have another pastor friend who pastors a church called Commission Church. I know the pastor's there, and I know that they would love to welcome you. And if you end up more on the northern side of Lee Summit, there's another church called Crown Point Church. I know the pastor there too, so I can get you hooked up with, getting connected with some of those communities. Now, Overland Park has amazing amounts of churches there. They've got multiple really large churches, if that's your preference, but they also have those smaller community churches as well. But as far as like the bigger churches, there's a Life Church actually located in Overland Park. If you've heard anything about the Life Church, they're in Overland Park. Another really great one is called Heartland Church. It's also a great congregation. Those are just two of the many ones that are over there. But either city has multiple options for you to grow your faith and find out, where you can meet those perfect set of friends that you want to do life with. And as far as the cost of living and the housing, let's get into the numbers of these two cities. All right, so home prices. Lee Summit's average home sale is $461,756 for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home that has about 2,500 square feet. And the average days on market in Lee Summit is right around 41. If you move over to Overland Park, the average sales price is a bit higher at $584,688 for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath home with about 2,880 square feet. The average days on market in Overland Park is about 32. Now that is just single family homes. Let's look at condos and townhomes and anything that's outside of single family homes. The Lee Summit area's average sales price is $284,753 for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with about 669 square feet. And the average days on market for this style of home is 46. If you move over to Overland Park, the average sales price for anything that's not a single family home is $395,797, and that is for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with about 1,900 square feet and an average days on market of 33. Both cities offer a wide range of price points and styles. You can get a property as low as $134,000 all the way up to multi-million-dollar properties. In fact, the recent sales for Overland Park were right under $4 million, and a few recent sales in Lee Summit were right under $2 million. So you've got this wide range, and not only that, but if you are looking in the Lee Summit area, the chances of you potentially finding some acreage in and around there is a little bit higher. All right, let's talk about transportation in the two cities. Yes, Lee Summit does offer public transportation options. The city actually offers both fixed route bus services and an on-demand transit through Ride KC and this program called OATS. Ride KC offers fixed route in and of itself in Lee Summit. It's called Route 550, and it also connects to the downtown Kansas City area. It includes a stop in the Unity Village, and if you don't know what Unity Village is, I actually have done a video about this little gem of an area. The Ride KC actually stops in Unity Village. Now, the OATS program, it provides this bus and van service within the Lee Summit area. and it operates Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So there's a little bit more restrictions when it comes to that, but you have a few options. This is a demand response transit, meaning that it picks up riders at these prearranged locations within the city limits. And these public transportation options, they do provide a way to get around in the Lee Summit and the neighboring areas, especially with the Kansas City, Missouri area. You also have the Amtrak station if you wanted to go downtown Kansas City and ride the train. Now let's talk about Overland Park. It also has some public transportation. The primary public transit system is Ride KC. Ride KC basically uses metro-wide system that services the entire Kansas City metropolitan area. Ride KC offers bus service, including several routes to Overland Park, and as well as this like micro transit and on-demand services. Additionally, there are park and ride options that are available. So the key aspect of public transportation in Overland Park is Ride KC buses, and these buses offers free transfers. And that has been an amazing addition to our city when it comes to transportation. I will say this, that if you live in Lee Summit and you work in Overland Park and you need to ride the bus, you would have to probably go downtown all the way and then connect to Overland Park route and then ride that bus all the way to Overland Park. There's not an easy way to get from Lee Summit to Overland Park through the bus service system. So if that is your case, you really do need a car because you're going to be spending most of the time on a bus. But the really cool thing, like I mentioned, about Ride KC is that there's zero fare, meaning that there is no charge at all to ride them. All right. Next subject is education. So if you're anything like Nathan and I, you care about your family and you care about education, and you're probably considering your education options if you have young kiddos. Both cities, Overland Park, Kansas, and Lee Summit, Missouri, have solid school districts. Both of them are known for very strong public school systems that consistently rank very high. But I will say this, that Overland Park, Kansas school districts consistently rank higher in the national and state comparisons. All right, so here is a breakdown of the two different school systems and what you're going to find. So as far as an overall district ranking, Overland Park, Kansas schools, which includes what they call Blue Valley, it is number 1 in the whole entire state of Kansas, and the Lee Summit School District is number 5. But from a national recognition, Blue Valley high schools often have a ranking in the nationals portfolio. However, the Lee Summit School Districts don't make this national recognition, but they do have some regional recognition. The graduation rankings for the Blue Valley or the Overland Park area is 97%, and the Lee Summit is almost as high at 94%. And the college readiness on both school districts is high. In fact, Lee Summit is high. What they say about the Overland Park or Blue Valley area is that it's very high. The student ratio for the Overland Park area is 14-1. Lee Summit School District is 13-1. And then as far as special programs are concerned, the Blue Valley School Districts include STEM, AP, IB, and gifted programs. When it comes to Lee Summit, there's the AP, the CTE, and then Lee Summit offers a strong arts and athletics program as well. And the school facilities, both of them are updated or they're very modern, so the school facilities are very good. As far as private schools are concerned, Overland Park, Kansas has a lot of Catholic private schools. If you wanted to get into more of the Christian or evangelical type programs, then you're going to have to drive to Shawnee where Maranatha Academy is. And there's a couple of other locations, but that one's the biggest one. In Lee Summit, there's also a couple of private Catholic schools, but then there's also Summit Christian Academy, which is where 2 of my kids graduated from high school. So one graduated from Maranatha, 2 of them graduated from Summit Christian Academy. But then there's also some homeschool co-ops as well, and you can have a lot of options when it comes to that. But as far as the public school system, some notable schools that are in the Lee Summit area, you've got Lee Summit West High School, which has strong academics, and then it's got an award-winning extracurricular activities. Lee Summit North High School has been known for being very competitive in athletics and the AP offerings. And then you've got Trail Ridge Elementary, which is also very highly rated, and there's a lot of great parent involvement in those schools. Then on the Overland Park area with the Blue Valleys, you've got Blue Valley North High School, which is consistently ranked among the top high schools in the entire United States. Then you've got Blue Valley West High School, which has top test scores, top athletics, and then it's got the STEM programs. Then you've got Valley Park Elementary, which is a very highly rated elementary. Now, parents, if you want to dive into getting really hyper local and talking about either one of these areas when it comes to Overland Park School District or the Lee Summit schools as well, and you want to talk about some of my experiences with them and take a deeper dive into the hyper local side of things, do not hesitate to reach out. We can talk about it. You just click on that link below in my description. There's a link that goes right to my calendar, and you just click on it and set up an appointment that's best for you, and we'll start talking about some of those things and hopefully answer some of your questions. Now, let's just have a recap here of pros and cons. In Lee Summit, the pros are the lake living options, which is so much a pro, especially if you are a nature enthusiast and you love living on the lake. So you've actually got lake living options where you can get into a neighborhood on a lake. And you've even got some dock living as well in options. So that's one. Another one is that you just got the generalistic lake lifestyle. So if you don't live in a lake community, you can actually enjoy a lake right down the street, almost in your backyard. It's also a little more affordable, and that's been a definite pro. And then there's a strong community feel. It's smaller. You've got just that small town vibe. And so those are some of the pros with Lee Summit. When it comes to the cons, there is a smaller job pool, and then you don't have the fine dining that Overland Park has. Now, as far as the pros for Overland Park, you've got more jogs, bigger area, you've got a lot of that corporate feel and that corporate vibe, which includes the larger networking opportunities that come with the whole corporate feel. And you've got also, too, a wider range of housing options because there are more people that live there. You've got a little more options for shopping and things of that nature. Then as far as the cons are concerned with Overland Park, there are higher priced homes, and it is a larger city, especially if you are coming from you want a little bit smaller of a community. Now, if you're still not sure what the best city is for you, I 100% totally understand. So feel free to connect up with me. I have that Zoom link down in the description below. Just click on that and we can talk a lot more about these two cities. And what'll happen is I'll pull up my Google Maps if you'd like, and we can talk about various lifestyles and where everything is at in conjunction with the Google Maps. Talking about all of that can help narrow down even to the neighborhoods that you would like to live in that actually fit you best. Obviously, there's no pressure at all, but a lot of my past clients and people who find me online, they love having the Zoom calls because it not only allows for you to understand our city a bit more, but it also allows me to get to know you better as well. And we can talk about the process of buying a home. We can talk about the neighborhoods, and it gives us a chance to find out a little bit more about your real estate goals, and we can work together as a team to work towards your real estate goals. So at the end of the day, it is not about which city wins. It's about you winning by choosing the city that is right for you, and you winning to choose what kind of lifestyle you want. If you found this video helpful, be sure and give it a thumbs up. And also, too, subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified when I post something new about Kansas City. And as always, go out and live your best Kansas City life.